Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. We're waiting. Obviously, we're not quite at time, and we're going to wait a few minutes so people can roll in. If you'd like to share where you are joining from, please add that to the chat, and welcome. Welcome, everyone. It looks like folks are rolling in. We'll wait just about one more minute before we get started, but we do want to make sure that we are respectful of your time. And so we will get started in just a minute. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Temple University Community Participation Hour. We are excited to start this webinar series on all things community participation. Today's webinar is going to be a bit introductory about what is community participation, why is it important, and some quick tips and strategies on how you can support community participation. We're very excited to get started in this. Some of our future webinars will be featuring a little bit more of our research, maybe some hot topic items that might be happening related to community participation. So please, stay tuned for those. You'll get them through our announcements. And since you've attended and registered for this webinar, we'll be sure to send you information about the upcoming webinars as well. Again, this is the what's, whys, and hows of community participation. My name is Dr. Gretchen Sneathen. I am the Associate Director for the Temple University Collaborative on Community Inclusion. Here's some quick tips and reminders for the webinar. We are recording this, So if for some reason you need to leave early, or you want to share it with a coworker, we will be able to send you the recording following participation. We are also live streaming, but don't worry, you are not on screen at all. Your camera is turned off and any of the chat will not be visible, so your name will not show up on that account, so don't worry about it. If you do have questions, please type them into chat and we will respond to them as soon as we can. Hannah is sort of behind the scenes supporting. She's managing some of the technology, and she can respond to your questions a little bit more quickly than I can. But we're both here to answer questions that you might have. For anyone that is interested, and actually for all of you, you will receive a certificate of attendance following the webinar. That will come in the next few days just to show that you were here and attended this webinar. And since I did say this is the first of a series in our community participation hour, the next one will be on October 24th from 2 to 3 p.m. So stay tuned for more details that will come out about that. So let's get started. The first half of what we will talk about is really an orientation to community participation. We wanted to start out this series to make sure that we were all on the same page with what is community participation. We wanted to talk a little bit about the potential health benefits of community participation, and we'll talk about the role that peer specialists might play in promoting and supporting community participation. Of course, anyone can support community participation, but we really believe that this is a unique role and optimal opportunity for peers who have that lived experience of living with a mental health condition and also engaging in their own community and drawing upon those experiences to support others in engaging in their community participation. In the second half, we'll go pretty quick because it's only an hour. We will be sharing a case example and walking through some strategies that show how you might support community participation. Of course, this is an hour webinar. You're not going to get everything and learn all the tips and tricks about community participation, but I will mention that the Temple University Collaborative, we are a research and training center. So if there's something that you hear in here that you would like more information about, or if you're like, oh, we want to take and adopt something like that in our organization, please reach out. We are able and available to provide training and technical assistance in working directly with you and with your team to really help shape what that program could look like and provide some ongoing supports to help you to adopt and implement strategies to promote community participation. So who are we? I mentioned that we are a research and training center. We are that. We're funded through the National Institutes on Disability Independent Living and Rehabilitation Research. And the goal of our center, or the mission really of our center, is that we aim to target those obstacles that prevent people living with mental illnesses from being full members of their community. We do that by identifying the supports that consumers or people with lived experience and communities need to enhance the opportunities and the prospects for community integration. And we also look to expand the range of opportunities for people who live with mental illnesses to participate in their communities as active and equal members. And we do that through two different approaches. We are a research center, so we conduct state-of-the-art research. Some of that research is to develop and test evidence-based practices that are aimed at increasing community participation. For example, we have studies right now that are aiming at supporting independent transportation. We have approaches that are supporting parents who live with mental illnesses to engage in meaningful activities with their children. We have studies that focus on supporting certified peer specialists to integrate and participate more in their own communities. And we also have some studies that are looking at ways to support college students to engage in their communities. If you're interested in learning more about our research, please don't hesitate to contact us. And those are just a few examples. We also have some studies that are looking at those different factors that might influence community participation. So does the types of neighborhoods where people live live influence community participation? Do attitudes or friendship networks influence community participation? So we have some studies that look at those general factors and see whether or not they're related to as facilitators or potentially barriers to participation. And then I mentioned that we are a training center. So we also provide training and technical assistance, and that is really as it's part of who we are. It's part of our funding. So the majority of that is free to agencies and organizations that really hope to implement community participation. So if there is an interest in promoting community participation, please let us know, and we're happy to help you out. We also have a very active website with a number of resources that talk through different strategies for supporting community participation. So you're welcome to explore that as well. So what do we mean by community participation? We mean things participating just like everyone else. So looking at ways to support people to engage, go to the park, go to their preferred religious organization and participate, going to the library, taking classes, working, volunteering, being a parent, all of the diverse aspects of being a community member. Did I stop screen sharing on purpose? I did not. So let me fix that. My apologies. I thought something happened. There we go. And we're back. Sorry about that. So engaging in those diverse areas of community participation. I love this picture on the bottom because it shows really a lot of different roles that people may play in the community. Think about your own life. You might be a parent, you might be a sibling, you might be a neighbor, you might be a peer specialist, you might be a teacher or educator, you might be a bike rider, you might be a runner. So we all incorporate different identities or roles into our daily life, and having those rich identities and being immersed in different aspects of our community is often what makes people well-rounded, and it helps them to feel connected to diverse aspects of their life and their community. We also believe at the collaborative that community participation is a medical necessity. It's not just a side focus, but really it is where providers and organizations should be supporting their efforts to get people to engage in those activities. Participation in the community really it contributes to improved health. And some of the research has found that there is improved cognition from the diversity of activities that people engage in. It increases opportunity for social interaction. And we know that loneliness and isolation is something that really impacts individuals living with serious mental illnesses. We know that distal supports, so in that social interaction, it can be people that are friends, but it might also be just becoming comfortable and interacting with people consistently in the community. Think about if you're riding the bus, you might ride with the same people, or taking the train in the morning, you might see some of the same folks, or going to the same coffee shop every day or a few times a week, you might see the same people that are there or the same barista. So you start to get to know these people in your community, and they can be an important source of social support, even if they're not your close friends. They can be people that are in your network and very important to your connectedness with that community. We know that people who are active in their community are more physically active because you're out and you're walking around. And we know that people who go out in their community have higher moods or better mood states. So we believe that the opportunity to live, work, and play in the community, just like everyone else, should be the mission of mental health services. And one key thing here is that phrase, just like everyone else. We really think that opportunities should be aimed at supporting people to participate out in the mainstream community. So it's not about bringing outside organizations in and providing isolated experiences, but really thinking about ways to support people to go out into the community and engage in those diverse activities. If it's participating in a or attending religious services in their service of, or their religion of choice, if it's going to the grocery store, it should look as much like how everyone else participates in the community as possible. This is also an approach that reflects self-directed care. We know that people have a desire to increase participation, but the thing that we can't do is say what people want or should be participating in. So we know that we need to work alongside individuals to have them identify those areas of interest and to help them to direct what their community participation looks like. And this also recognizes that there's value in diverse participation. I can't tell you what you should be doing in the community. I can tell you what I do and why that is beneficial for me, but I can't tell you what is the perfect approach to community participation for anyone else. So here are some examples of some of the established health outcomes related to community participation. We do know that folks who are actively engaged in their community and participate in diverse areas experience lower traditional mental health symptoms. We know that there's an improvement in physical health and wellness. People who are out and engaged in their community have better cognition, likely because they are in diverse environments. So they're getting that diverse stimuli from being out in the community. They're seeing different people. They're interacting with different folks. There's a different level of problem solving when you engage and participate in your community that's required. People who participate in their community often have better stress and coping skills. They're better with strategies for self-regulation. They have higher self-esteem, improved quality of life, better scores in life satisfaction and meaning, and also greater social support network. So when we talk about community participation as a medical necessity, really, I think it's important to think about what is that definition of medical necessity. And part of the reason that we come at it from this approach is that we're often working alongside community mental health service providers who are required to deliver services that are deemed medically necessary. And so if we frame community participation within that context of medical necessity, you can start to see how the community can be a source and an opportunity to improve health and function. So again, this is the definition. Services or benefits are reasonably expected to prevent the onset of an illness, condition, or injury or disability, to reduce, ameliorate the physical, mental, or developmental effects of an illness, condition, or disability, and then also to assist the individual to achieve or maintain maximum functional capacity in performing daily activities, taking into account their capacity. So this, I think, is really an opportunity. We know that community participation does improve health. So it does hit that number 2 in reducing some of the effects of an illness or condition, but really it's an opportunity to help people to increase their confidence and their ability to engage in their communities. The other approaches often focus on really symptom management and increasing capacity or skills that may be related to community participation. And so a more traditional medical model says, well, we have to address people's symptoms level and we have to manage those prior to participation. And we really need to build those skill capacity before we support participation. But honestly, the research doesn't support that approach. There is research that says symptom levels and cognitive capacity aren't really good predictors of community participation. So some people may have greater traditional symptoms, but they're still actively engaged in their community. And other folks may have less, but maybe less engaged. So it's not really a clear direction that fixing, quote unquote, this leads to greater participation. We also know that increasing capacity, so strictly skill development, where you learn these activities in an isolated environment, don't always translate directly to community participation out in the mainstream community. So what we really focus on are strategies that rapidly get people out and engaged in the community. We also believe, as one of these fundamentals, is that community participation is a right. And so this really, the definition here is that of community participation is really that opportunity to live in the community and to be valued for one's uniquenesses and abilities, just like everyone else. So we think that everyone should have the opportunity and has that right to engage in the community. And this isn't just us that believes it from the collaborative, but we also know that there's legal and policy grounding. So the Americans with Disabilities Act speaks to this. There's also the Olmstead decision in 1999 that talks about unnecessary institutionalization as a form of discrimination that's prohibited specifically by the ADA. And then there's these other initiatives that really focus on supporting people to engage in their community, and that services should be moving people towards the community and also being delivered directly in the community and not in more isolated or institutionalized settings. We also know that people who have mental illnesses desire participation. So one of the resources that are tools that we developed at the collaborative early on is this community participation measure. And it is an assessment of community participation, and it asks about participation in the past 30 days without staff. So really it's trying to explore areas of participation that people are interested in doing. We ask about, is this activity important? So it might ask about things like going to the park, going to the library, going grocery shopping or employment, taking classes for skill or classes for fun. And it asks about if you've done these things without the support of staff. So we're really trying to get at the idea of independent participation. It can be participation with other people. So you could go with a friend, you could go with a family member. It's really looking outside of those paid supports. And we ask about importance. Is this activity important to you? And do you do it as much as you would like? And that's that sufficiency piece. So within some of the specific areas, and I'm going to give you some examples of this, not an exhaustive list, but some of the areas that are reflected in this measure. 36 to 91% of our participants, and we've used this multiple times, and consistently people are telling us that these things are important to them, and that of those areas that are important, many people would like to do them more often. So let me show you some examples. So we know, and again, these are just 4 areas of all of the areas that we look at, but of education, 50% of people say that taking a class for leisure or life skills is important. And of those 50%, 64% would like to do it more often. We know that going to parks can be a great resource for folks, and 72% of people say that going to a park or a recreation center is important. Opportunities for socialization, opportunities for in improving physical health, and 48% of those individuals would like to go more often. Volunteering can be a great way to connect with others, a great way to give back to a cause that you're interested in, a great way to really have that sense of connectedness and mattering. And we know that 68% of people report that volunteering is important, and that 42% of those would like to do it more often. And then religion is an area of participation that 78% of folks have told us that it's going to a place of worship is important, and that 59% of them would like to go more often as well. And we know that sometimes religion is an area where providers are not sure how they can support that. But we really think if there are mainstream opportunities in the community, we should be thinking about ways to support it. It doesn't have to reflect our own specific values. And here's some quotes from folks that we've worked with in the past that really speak to some of these areas of participation. So this individual says, my neighbors see me with a book bag and they know that I'm doing something with my life. He had started taking some classes at the community college, and just that physical presence and the visibility of having a backpack was something that reflected a value that he had to the rest of his community. This individual said, in the early mornings, I love to bike in the park to watch the sunrise and meditate. It's the best way to start my day. So this was a person who talked about the parks as really an important resource for him, and that it was something that gave him that important start, and engaging in doing that was meaningful. Someone about volunteering, this person said, I meet all kinds of people I would have never known. And it feels good to help people. Often we know that individuals who are receiving services, really any kind of services, they get a lot of support, but may not have the same opportunity to provide that support. So, which is really important in developing meaningful relationships, is having that balance. So supporting people to engage in volunteering can help people to feel like they are, to give them the opportunity to also give back to others. And this person was sharing that their religious participation actually gave them opportunity to engage in other areas of their community. So they posted a free list of things to do at my church, and now everyone's talking to me about things that are happening in the community. So the going to church was also a connector and an opportunity to meet other people, and then to share other opportunities for engaging in the community. So again, we really think that anyone who is working in mental health services can be thinking about ways and strategies to support community participation, but that certified peer specialists are really in a unique role to support people to participate in the community, that drawing upon lived experiences and being able to share stories of community participation and really connect how community participation has been a source and connects to their own recovery can be really powerful. And that's also an opportunity to talk about challenges and different strategies that you might have used as an approach to increase your own community participation. So here are some ways that we think peers, and when I say we work very closely with a number of peer specialists. And so it's not just us saying that these are what people should do, but really in working with peers to better understand their own expertise and their roles. But these are some of the potential roles that we've found that can be really effective in working with peer specialists to support community participation. So opportunities to identify community participation interests, connecting with those community resources, building what we call a community participation into a support plan, working with motivation and helping people to motivate to try something maybe new or challenging, doing some specific skill building related to community participation, particularly building those skills in the environment where they're occurring, and also sharing community participation stories. So we know that storytelling is a big part of a peer's role in connecting with folks. And so thinking about ways that you can share your own community participation story to talk about how it's helped you in your own recovery, but also how your experience and example can help people to think about how they may navigate their own community participation interests and pursue their own goals in the community. So I'm going to pause just briefly because that was a quick orientation to community participation, an opportunity to define community participation, those health benefits, and also to talk through the role of peer specialists in promoting community participation. In the last part of this webinar, we are going to talk about an example. So we're going to hear a story, and I'm going to go back and forth between me talking and then also a recording of a dialogue between, it's a mock example, but it's a dialogue between Beth, who is our certified peer specialist, and Oliver, who is our individual who is working with Beth to increase his own participation in the community. So I'll pause a little bit for those scenarios to play. And then we will also talk through the factors for developing that individualized participation plan and identifying those strategies for supporting sustainable participation. So as we talk through this, I'd like you to think about your own goals related to community participation, the people that you may work with or the people that you may know, and how you might integrate this into your own relationships and your own work, and in learning about what people are interested in doing in their communities and supporting participation. So these are the 5 steps, because it's hard to call them anything else, but the 5 steps in supporting community participation. And it's, while there is an arrow, it's not necessarily linear. You might go back and forth between these. Obviously, listening to stories and experiences is something that happens multiple times throughout this process. Setting community participation goals based on those stories and experiences and interests that people have, working with people to develop their own goals of participation. This is an opportunity to reflect back and make sure that those goals are continuing. So if you're further along in this process and it sounds like goals and interests have changed, there's no harm in going back and re-exploring and resetting some of those goals. Exploring what we call barriers and facilitators. So barriers are those things that may get in the way of participation, and they can be very physical. And if you don't have access to transportation, it may be hard to get out in your community, or it could be more individual to yourself. If you have specific anxiety about going places, if trying through new things is hard for you, that might be a barrier. So there could be things that are external to you that may make it hard for community participation, or things that are more internal that you have to sort of work through or navigate to manage and then to facilitate that participation. We also talk about facilitators. So these are those resources and things that are either, again, external to you or within your own strengths that can help you either navigate those barriers or might facilitate participation. And you could think about them more generically, like if you don't have access to transportation, would getting a bus pass help solve that problem? Or getting a ride from someone else might be able to. And then the 4th piece here dives into more of those individual supports and strategies. So finding those resources that may be available in your community that could help you navigate some of those barriers or might maximize some of those facilitators that were identified. And we all have our own personal resources and strengths. And so working with people to explore and navigate those can be really important. To draw upon those individual strengths and resources in order to move towards independent community participation. And then with anything, providing that ongoing support. We all have sort of fluctuations in, like, things are going really well and you may just need kind of that high five cheerleader support, but sometimes it's not, and you need someone to say, that's okay. I'm here to support you in that. So let's hear from Beth and Oliver. And sorry about that. And I see Hannah just mentioned that the chat was not working. Apologies for that. It should be now. So if you have questions, or if you've had questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. And I am going to play a quick audio here that introduces Beth and Oliver. At least I'm planning to.
Meet Oliver and Beth. Oliver recently started meeting with Beth, a peer specialist. He is interested in getting out in his community more than he has been. He works and goes to the grocery store and rides his bike around the community, but just doesn't feel really connected to anything or anyone. Beth is working with him to help him explore his interests in the community and to set some new community participation goals. Let's have a listen.
Hey, Oliver. Last time we met, I told you about my experiences with joining a Zumba class and participating in an online book club to increase my community engagement. What about you? What do you currently do in the community?
Honestly, not much. I work part-time at a gym, and I ride my bike around my apartment, but that's it. It feels pretty boring. I go to the grocery store, because I have to eat every week. And I try to go to the park every month. They have movies in the park.
I hear you. It can feel tough when work is the main focus of your week. It sounds like you're doing some things, though, even if it's not as much as you'd like. You mentioned a weekly grocery store trip and monthly movie in the park, though. It's great that you already have some activities that you do.
Yeah, I guess. I'm just not happy with how things are now. I feel pretty bored.
So listening to that, we hear that Beth is really talking with Oliver to try to better understand things that he's interested in doing. We'll get to the things he's interested in. I've heard these audios a lot, so sometimes I jump ahead. But she's getting to know him. She's really trying to explore what's going on in his life. You may have heard that he's not totally happy with what he's doing, but Beth heard that even though he'd like to do more, she's really affirming that he is doing some things currently in his community. So these are some strategies when you're listening to people's stories to affirm the things that they are doing, even if it's something that they may not see or highlight as important, or not necessarily as important, but they may kind of skip over it and focusing on the negative. So highlighting those things that people are doing, and validate when you hear things that are challenging. It might be that must have been very difficult. It sounds like it was really hard to not be able to do X, Y, and Z. So we'll see some of those as we hear a little bit more from Oliver and Beth. So we're going to jump into the next part, which really digs into what Oliver is interested in doing out in his community.
One of the first steps to supporting community participation is to explore someone's interests. We heard a bit from Oliver about his current participation. Let's have a listen to see what he's interested in doing in the community.
What's something you used to enjoy in the past?
I loved going to church with my mom. I really miss that.
What made it special for you?
The spiritual aspect, of course, but also the social side. Potlucks, life groups, and just meeting people and feeling like there were a group of people who knew you out there. Like, I like the movies in the park, but no one really cares if I go.
I can understand that. When I first started going to Zumba, I went to some really big classes in the park. Some weeks I went and some weeks I skipped, but I felt like no one noticed either way. I wanted to find a group that I connected with. It's great that you had that connection at church with your mom. Are there other activities that might be that connection for you? Or other things you'd like to try?
Mainly, I'd like making more friends. I think I might like to try an art class. I used to paint. Maybe I could volunteer somewhere.
Those are some great options. Let's prioritize. What's most important to you right now?
I think going to church. I'd like to do that, because I think I might be able to make some friends that would last longer than an art class. My old church used to have volunteer opportunities too. So maybe I could do that there.
So we start to hear a little bit more about what Oliver is interested in doing. He's got this desire, he has this past experience that highlights his interest in going to church because of an experience that he's had in the past. You'll notice that he talked about not feeling connected when he goes to the things that he does. So he goes to the movies in the park and he likes it, but he doesn't feel connected to anyone there. It's sort of a big anonymous event. And you might also recognize that Beth made some parallels to her own experiences to really help connect with Oliver as he's sharing his story. So one of the things that when you're working with someone to help them explore their interests and set that community participation goal is to focus on those things that are important to the individual, and then also not done enough. So we want to make sure that we're finding things that people would like to do more. Again, this is a collaborative process. You'll notice that Beth was asking questions to help Oliver really come to the decision in the area of participation that he was interested in. And in this case, it's going to church. So she is not responsible for setting the goals for him, but really helping him to explore and identify what he would like to do. So in doing this, we want to really try to understand what the participant's motivation is for doing those activities. And it says here to consider like intrinsic, so those things that are individual to the person, and those extrinsic motivators. So when we think about motivation, I like to give the example. I worked with an individual who she wanted to go to the gym. And so I may assume, and I say that, I emphasize that I may make the assumption that she wants to go to the gym to be more active, to be healthy, because those are stereotypical things as to why someone may want to go to the gym. And those are important, of course, but I was wrong. So in making those assumptions, I may push that narrative and actually minimize what the actual reason and actual motivation for her to go to the gym was. And that was that she recognized some of her own patterns of health, and her own lifestyle where her son was starting to adopt some of them. So she wasn't terribly active, and she was seeing that her son wasn't terribly active. And so her motivation was to be a role model for her son. And so understanding that motivation was really critical in helping her to continue to engage, because then you knew that source of desired participation instead of just imposing what I thought was that motivator for participation. Working with people to set some long-term goals. So what does, if you're engaged in, we'll refer back to Oliver, if you're going to church, what does that look like? Is it something where you go periodically and have a place where you feel comfortable, or is it something that you want to do more frequently? Is it something you're going every week? You're engaged in diverse aspects of it. So helping people to envision what that long-term participation may look like, and then figuring out the steps they need to take in order to get there. And we're focused on these achievable tasks that reflect that long-term vision. So that long-term vision is always being worked towards, and those achievable tasks provide that sort of ongoing motivation to continue participation. So let's dive in with Beth and Oliver here. And we're going to hear a little bit about his barriers.
Once someone has expressed an interest in an area of community participation, it's important to explore what might get in their way of participation and what supports they might have to help with participation. These can be called barriers and facilitators. Let's listen as Beth talks with Oliver about his barriers and facilitators.
Is there anything that's holding you back from going to church now?
After my mom died, I stopped going. It just wasn't the same without her. And now I live in a new city, and I don't know where a church I would like is, and I don't have a car. I'm also pretty nervous about going by myself.
It sounds like you're not sure where to go and you're feeling a bit anxious about going. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm also worried about what people will think of me.
I hear you. I felt the same before joining Zumba. Going somewhere new can be scary. Remember, though, you belong just as much as anyone else. In fact, everyone there was new at one point, and we can work together to help you feel more prepared. Most people are excited to have new people join, but if you do feel rejection, then we can try to understand why, or maybe it's just not the right place for you.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Okay, so I know there are some things you're worried about, but let's talk about your strengths. What are you good, and what resources do you have that will help you with going to church?
I'm pretty good with managing my money. I also like small talk, and I have good memories of going to church.
That's great. I'm glad you can reflect on what you can do and the positive experiences you've had. Not everyone can do that. And you like small talk. That's a great strength when you go somewhere and want to meet new people. You're also willing to try something new, and you have a bike to get around your neighborhood.
My bike is great. I don't know what I'd do without it. I can't afford a car, and the idea of driving makes me really nervous.
So we've started to learn a little bit more about Oliver's past experiences, some of the things that may make it more challenging for him. He talked about being nervous about going somewhere new. He talked about having past experiences where he was going with his mom, and that was very positive, but when she passed away, it was difficult. So we know some of the things that make it hard for him. We also heard a little bit about his resources. We know he has a bike that can be a great way for him to get around his community. He's comfortable on it. We also know that he likes small talk, and he's willing to try. So those are some personal resources that he can draw upon when pursuing this area of participation that he's interested in. So I think when you're talking with folks about their own participation goals and things that they would like to do, exploring some of those challenges that may make it harder, and sometimes that's time. Finding the time to do things. It might be financial barriers. Being out in your community can be expensive depending on what it is that you want to do. Transportation is a barrier that we hear often. And then there may be, different expectations. So products or equipment that you might need in order to successfully participate. So for example, if I'm taking a class, there may be an expectation that I have a computer or at least have access to one. So I may not have one, which would be a barrier. But on the flip side, a facilitator might be that I'm aware of computer loaner programs, or I know I could use computers at the library to get the work done. So after exploring some of, I'm sorry, I went through half of those as barriers and jumped to facilitators. There may be, so the first category here is more like physical barriers, so things that may be preventing. The second one really speaks to things that a person has, their own skills and abilities, and the supports and relationships that they can draw upon, and then also their own attitudes, but also the attitudes of community members, or important relationships. So if we think about that in terms of barriers, there may be, I don't know how to do that, could be a barrier to participating. So that may be something that makes it a challenge. Supports where they don't have they don't feel like they have anyone who's in their corner to help them to participate, may be a barrier. Not knowing anyone to go with can be a huge challenge. I know when I first lived in Philadelphia, going to a restaurant by myself was sometimes intimidating. But meeting a friend to go with made it a little bit easier. And then your own attitudes about participation, or the perceived attitudes or the actual attitudes of other people, may be a barrier. And the same thing with services, systems, and policies. These are a little bit more at that higher level that might be harder for people to identify, but there may be community level services or policies that might affect someone's participation. So thinking about these, and I've framed them in the sense of barriers, but the nice thing is that barriers often have a counter as a facilitator. And sometimes the answer to a barrier is the opposite. So if you don't have transportation, you need transportation. But there may be other ways that are not necessarily that direct. So if transportation is a challenge, finding resources in your neighborhood that you could walk to may be that facilitator, or finding a friend who can provide a ride. So it draws in that relational piece. So it's not necessarily just you don't have money, so you need money to participate. It might be exploring other ways or other resources that might facilitate participation. So these are some questions to think through. What has prevented or made engagement more difficult in the past? And so drawing upon the past experiences, and then thinking about ways to make engagement, what may make engagement more difficult. So concerns that the person might have. And then thinking about facilitators, again, drawing on that past experiences, what has led to success in the past? What are some of the things that you've drawn upon before? And then what may make, so thinking about ways that they could draw in their own facilitators to make those connections. And so from the example, we hear about the facilitators that that might be focused on his bike. So his bike provided that transportation. His own skills and own past experiences with church may help to facilitate his participation. And so those were very individual to him. So again, we have to explore those as they're related to the person, because they are driving this experience. They are driving the development of their own plan. And no one can really say, well, this will facilitate your participation. We can kind of guide if we have some ideas, but really should be looking to help support the individual to draw upon and share their own experiences and resources that might be a facilitator. We're going to hear from Beth and Oliver one more time. And this is going to be sharing community resources. So let's hear this.
We heard about some of the concerns Oliver has and about some of his strengths. Let's find out a little more about his resources and his plan for going.
Okay, Oliver. What steps do you think you need to take in order to get to church?
Well, I guess I should find a church that I want to go to. I need to think about how far it is. I want to make sure I can bike there, but I don't want to be all sweaty when I get there. I'd also like to go first thing in the morning so I can have the rest of my day to do other things if I need to.
All right, so finding something in your neighborhood and a church that starts early. Is that right? Is there anything else you'd like in a church?
That's what I can think of to start. Wait. The church I used to go to had Bible studies and had a potluck once a month. That was nice.
So additional ways to connect with people at the church. That goes along with what you said about wanting to connect with people. So how do you think we can find a church that fits your preferences?
I guess we could walk around and try to find one. But I don't know how we'll know when the service is and if they have Bible studies or not.
That's certainly one way. The church my sister goes to has information like their schedule and events on a website. Maybe we could look on Google Maps to see what's near you and then see if they have a website that would have the information you're looking for.
Of course. I didn't even think of that. My mom's church was so old school I don't even think they had a website. You just had to know. Let's see what we can find.
So we're starting to see this process of exploring some of those resources that might be in the community and strategies to finding out that information. And we'll see that Beth here is asking some of those open-ended questions. She does this strategy of asking back. So Oliver mentioned that he was interested in one that was close, so in his neighborhood, and also had early service times. And so she asked that and then asked if there was more. So some strategies to help people to confirm and affirm that that's what they're interested in. And Oliver came up with a specific strategy here, but it didn't, it may not have been the most efficient. And so Beth shared an experience that she was aware of, that some churches may have websites. And so, kind of providing this example and giving him the opportunity to respond and take and run with it. So in continuing this process, you might help him to think about other resources. What does he need to feel successful in order to go? And he may say, well, when I was going to church with my mom, I would wear my Sunday clothes or whatever that might be. And I would bring my Bible with me. So I'd need to bring a backpack so I can have that. So asking about what does participation look like for him so that he's able to be prepared and bring those things so that he's got the plan in place. And we do this planning so that we're able to identify any concerns or identify any risks that the person may perceive, so that then we're able to help the person think through what they need to be successful, so that they have it ready, so that it is a more successful, or it is a successful experience in that first try. And we actually did this. We identified his community and personal resources. And then the next strategy and the next process is really to provide some of those ongoing supports. So, the next step that Beth might take with Oliver is to, he's worked to really set up this plan. He's maybe identified an area, a church that's local to him, and found out when it's happening. So developing that individualized plan of, well, when do you want to go? All right, so you've said you're going to go on Saturday or Sunday. What do you need? And following up to see if he went, if it was successful, how did it go? Let's say he started out going and, maybe realized he forgot something and had to go home and then was going to be late, so he just didn't go. So that, that may be perceived by him as a failure. I didn't make it. But, Beth might be able to talk with him and say, well, you tried, you went, you got on your bike, you had everything ready, you forgot one thing. But you made that effort to go. So it sounds like, you took the initiative, you had everything ready, and now you recognize that something was forgotten. So let's make a plan for next time, so that you're able to be successful. So trying to find ways to reframe perceived failures, so people don't sit in the stew, as I say, or sit in the funk, and really focus on what didn't go well, but thinking through, like, you tried and you made that go at it, and that's what's important. But helping them to think about those successes, and then constantly thinking about ways to develop those natural supports. So if it's, a natural support can be people, but it also might be, well, let's make sure you put your bag out by your bike the night before, so that you have everything ready and you can just hop on and go, so that, you're not rushing around trying to find things in the morning. So really helping think through, like, how you can set up your environment to be a natural support, as well as connecting with other people. Do you need a phone call from a friend to help remind you to go? Or is there someone who can go with you that might make you feel more comfortable and reduce some of those anxieties? So thinking through how you develop, how you as a peer might provide some of those ongoing supports, but also how you might help them to draw upon more natural supports to continue that encouraged participation. And the other thing here is what we call, like, real-time processing. So helping people to think through what they're seeing in the environment and problem solving it in the moment. And again, this would be if Oliver and Beth were going somewhere together and Oliver's like, I don't know what to do. I can't figure this out. Beth might help him to think, well, let's step back. Let's think about it. Let's look around at the resources that we have. What do you think you should do? So just kind of talking through that experience with him, and helping him to develop the skills and develop the confidence to problem solve can be really important, instead of just doing for him or help or problem solving in the moment for him. So that was, and I don't have a scenario for Beth and Oliver, but that is kind of the experience and strategies that hopefully you're able to think through and take and adapt for your own facilitation of community participation in the people that you work with. So we're coming right at the end of our community participation hour, and I wanted to just open it up to the chat. If you have any comments that you would like to share with us, or if you have any questions, I will remind you this is recorded, so we are able to send the recording to you, or the PowerPoint. We are also live streaming on Facebook, so I believe you can go there and watch it as well. But if we send you the recording, we will be able to send you the transcript that goes along with it. The other thing that I will mention is that we are developing a series of micro trainings that will be much shorter than this, but will cover and highlight some of the same content. If there's something that you were interested in, you want to go back, but you don't want to go back for the entire thing, we will be releasing those soon, so you can check those out as well. And I'm going to hop onto the chat to see what I see. And that's Hannah. She's mentioning that we do have another webinar next month, and she has put the registration information there in the chat. If you have questions that you think of at a later time point and you would like to email either of us, our emails are here on the screen. And if you don't have any questions, I do hope that this was meaningful for you, and I hope you were able to take some information that you can take back to the organization that you work with, or some tips for your own community participation and thinking about how you can better engage in your community. But again, if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. So again, thank you very much. And I will stay on for a few minutes just to answer questions as they might come up.